You ever get that weird gut feeling when something small happens and you just know it's about to mess with your entire day? That's exactly how it started for me last Tuesday when I walked into the office and found some new guy sitting in my chair. Not just any chair, but the one spot I've claimed like a second skin for the past 3 years at this startup. And no, it wasn't a mix-up. He was smirking like he meant it. So, a little backstory. I'm Alex, 28, and I work as a product manager at this small but growing tech company downtown. Nothing fancy, but I like the vibe. We're the kind of place where everyone has their own desk, and my seat is a thing, not just a random chair, but a legit territory. Over time, I turned my little corner of the open office into a mini fortress of productivity, complete with my favorite coffee mug, a couple of succulents, and a framed picture of my dog. Now, on this particular morning, I strutted in, pretty wired after an early run, ready to crush some deadlines. But the moment I got near my desk, I froze. There he was, the new guy, cool as hell, leaning back in my chair like he was auditioning for a movie role. Tall, dark hair, slightly messy, sharp jawline, and those piercing blue eyes that just didn't seem to care one bit about the new guy rules. I caught him smirking right when I stopped a foot away. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady but definitely not hiding the surprise. "I think you're in my seat." He didn't even blink. "Yeah, I figured I'd test the waters, see if anyone notices." At first, I thought he was joking, but the way he looked at me, like he knew exactly what he was doing, I realized this wasn't some innocent prank. There was a kind of quiet challenge in his tone, like he was saying, "I'm not here to play by your rules." I glanced around. Some coworkers were glancing over, curious about the new tension cracking the usual calm. I knew I should probably just tell him to move, but part of me was intrigued. I mean, who was this guy who just casually decided to take over my spot without so much as a, "Hey, new guy here?" "I'm Evan," he said, finally extending a hand, still seated like he owned the place. I shook it, a little wary but oddly drawn in. There was something magnetic about him, something that made me want to hear his story, and maybe, just maybe, let him keep that chair for a bit longer. And just like that, my day went from predictable to completely unpredictable. But I had no idea just how much trouble Evan sitting in my seat was about to stir up. I pulled my hand back almost instinctively, but caught myself and gave a small nod. "Alex," I said, trying to keep it casual but feeling a weird mix of curiosity and irritation. I mean, who just commandeers someone's desk like that? Especially on day one. "So Alex, what's the deal with this seat? Is it sacred or something?" Evan grinned, like he was genuinely amused by the whole thing. I shrugged, trying to play it cool even though my brain was warning me to reclaim my territory ASAP. "It's just been my spot forever. Comes with a view of the city, good lighting, and, well, a certain vibe." He laughed, a low, easy sound that stopped me for a second. "Vibe, huh? Guess I'm in the wrong chair to find my own vibe, then." I raised an eyebrow. "You can try, but I'm pretty protective of this spot." "Good to know," he said, leaning forward a bit, eyes locking with mine. "Maybe we can share it." At that moment, I realized he wasn't just some arrogant new hire looking for a laugh. There was something oddly charming about the way he managed to be both bold and casual. It was disarming. Before I could respond, Mia from HR popped by, clipboard in hand. "Alex, Evan, glad you two have met." "Evan, we just finished your setup. Hope you're settling in okay?" Evan stood and gave a polite nod. "Yeah, settling in great. Thanks." I couldn't help but notice the way he glanced back at my chair one more time before heading off with Mia. A part of me wanted to warn him again, but another part was curious about where this was headed. The day went on with an odd energy. Every time I looked over, Evan was at my desk, or at least near it, typing away with an intensity that made me forget my initial irritation. During lunch, I found myself scanning the office, wondering where he'd gone, and feeling a weird sort of anticipation. Later that afternoon, I caught him near the coffee machine. He was making a latte, hands steady but focused. I walked over, trying to break the ice without sounding too desperate. "Need some help navigating the coffee options?" I teased. He looked up, a little surprised but smiled. "That obvious, huh? I'm more of a black coffee guy." But this place makes it complicated. We laughed, and I felt the tension from earlier ease up. It was like beneath the new guy who takes your chair exterior, there was someone trying to find his footing. Over the next few days, Evan and I kept bumping into each other, in meetings, near the snack table, sometimes even walking out of the building at the same time. He was easy to talk to, but also a bit of a mystery. He'd share little things about himself. He'd moved here from another city, loved hiking, had a sarcastic sense of humor, but there was a guarded edge, like he wasn't revealing everything. One afternoon, I finally decided to confront him about the chair thing, half expecting a fight or at least some awkwardness. We were alone near the window when I said, "So, about the seat, are you ever going to give it back?" He looked out at the skyline, then back at me, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "Maybe. Depends on how much you're willing to share." I chuckled, surprised by how much I wanted to hear more from him. "You're impossible." "Yeah, well, I've been told that before." There was a pause, and then he surprised me. "Look, Alex, I know this is kind of a weird way to introduce myself, but I like taking risks, and honestly, sitting in your seat was just the first one." His eyes held mine, and for a moment, I felt like I was standing on the edge of something. Maybe it was just the thrill of the new, or maybe it was something more. The next day, I found a small note taped to my monitor. It wasn't signed, just a simple message. "Care to share that view with me sometime?" My heart skipped. I looked around, half expecting to spot Evan watching me from somewhere. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about a chair anymore. It was the start of something neither of us had planned, but both couldn't ignore. I stuffed the note into my pocket and got back to work, already wondering what the next move would be. I spent the next few hours stealing glances at Evan, trying to figure out if he was just messing with me or actually serious. The office buzzed around us, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the usual chaos of a midweek grind. But every time I looked his way, he seemed different, less tooly, more genuine, like he was waiting for some kind of signal from me. By the time the clock hit 5, I was already thinking about how to respond to that note. It wasn't every day a guy slid you a message like that, especially in a place where everyone tries to keep it professional. But Evan? He seemed determined to blur those lines in the best way possible. I grabbed my bag, hesitated, then pulled the note out of my pocket. On the back, I scribbled a quick reply. "Depends. What's the plan?" I folded it and slipped it back into the envelope, then made my way toward Evan's desk. He was packing up, earbuds in, bobbing his head to some music. I tapped his shoulder. He turned, surprised to see me. "Got your note," I said. "Figured I'd see if you had a plan." He smiled without missing a beat. "Well, I was thinking coffee. Somewhere not our usual spot. Somewhere that doesn't feel like work." "Sounds good," I said, trying to sound casual, but feeling like my heart was doing flips. We left the office together, walking into the early evening air that smelled faintly like rain. The city was softer now, the harshness of the day melting into the golden light of sunset. Evan led me to this tiny, tucked-away cafe a couple blocks over. It was the kind of place with mismatched chairs, local art on the walls, and a playlist that made you want to stay forever. We ordered, found a corner table, and suddenly the whole new guy vibe melted away. Over steaming cups of coffee, we started talking about everything but work. Movies we loved, terrible dates we'd survived, what brought us here. He told me how he'd left a job he hated back in another city, chasing something he couldn't quite name. I shared a bit about how I'd fallen into my role here, almost by accident, but grown to care about it more than I expected. There was a moment when he caught me staring and just smiled like he knew exactly what I was thinking. "You're wondering why I took your chair on day one, huh?" I laughed, a little embarrassed. "Yeah, I guess I am." He leaned in, voice dropping just a fraction. "I wanted to shake things up. Not just here, but in my life. I thought starting with something small, your seat, might be a good way." There was honesty there that hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just bravado or a joke. It was a challenge to both of us. We stayed there until the cafe started shutting down, lost in conversation. When we finally stepped out, the city was dark but buzzing, alive with possibilities. Walking back, Evan slipped his hand into mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't pull away. The next week at work was a strange mix of normal and new. We kept the chair situation unofficially shared, with Evan sometimes sitting, sometimes letting me take it back. But the real change was in us, those little moments, stolen smiles, passing touches. It was like the office had this secret energy nobody else could see. One afternoon, we ended up alone in a meeting room, prepping for a big presentation. I caught him watching me, his eyes softer than usual. "Hey," he said quietly, "thanks for giving me a chance." I shrugged, a grin creeping in. "You're not so bad at shaking things up." He laughed, and it felt like the start of something I didn't want to stop. But then, just as I was starting to think maybe this could go somewhere, I overheard some coworkers whispering about Evan's past, something about a messy breakup, a burned bridge at his last job. Suddenly, the easy vibe between us felt fragile, like it could crack at any moment. I didn't know what to do with that information. Should I ask him? Should I just ignore it? And more importantly, did it even matter if what was growing between us felt this real? That night, I found myself staring at my phone, wanting to reach out, but scared of what might come next. I had no idea where this was headed, but one thing was clear. Evan sitting in my seat was the best kind of trouble I'd ever gotten into. The next morning, I showed up at work with the weight of those whispers hanging over me. It's ridiculous how quickly your brain can spiral when you don't have all the pieces. I kept replaying the snippets I overheard in the break room. Someone mentioning a messy breakup, another hinting at Evan leaving his old job on bad terms. None of it was concrete, but it was enough to plant a seed of doubt. I made my way through the office, trying to act normal, but every time I caught Evan's eye, I felt like a question was burning behind my own. Should I bring it up? Would it change things? Hell, maybe I was just scared of opening a door that might lead somewhere I wasn't ready for. At my desk, I was buried in emails when Evan slid into the chair opposite me. He looked a little tired, but that same easy smile was there. "Morning," he said. "You look like you've got a million thoughts." I hesitated, then just blurted out, "Can I ask you something personal?" He raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Shoot." I took a breath. "I heard some things about your last job, about a breakup. I'm sorry if that's none of my business, but I don't want to start something with you if there's a mess I'm not seeing." For a moment, he just stared at me, no expression. Then something shifted, his shoulders relaxed, and he let out a slow breath. "You're right, there is a mess. It's not the kind of thing people usually bring up on day 2, but I get that you want to know." He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "I was with someone for a long time, the kind of relationship you think will last forever. Turns out, forever wasn't in the cards. It ended badly, with a lot of hurt and things said that can't be taken back. Around the same time, I left my last job because I just needed a fresh start. No drama, no past." I nodded slowly, feeling the pieces fall into place. "That sounds rough." "It was," he admitted, "but I'm trying to move forward. That's why I took your seat on purpose, to shake up my routine. Remind myself I'm not stuck." There was vulnerability in his voice that made me want to reach across the desk and just tell him it was okay. Instead, I smiled. "Thanks for telling me." He returned the smile, a little brighter this time. "Thanks for asking." That afternoon, we wrapped up a meeting together and ended up grabbing lunch. The conversation flowed easier than before, with fewer walls between us. Evan talked about his love for late-night hikes and how he found peace in the city's quiet spots. I shared stories about my dog, the little moments that made the daily grind worth it. We laughed, shared awkward stories, and even debated over which pizza place was better. Spoiler, I'm right. When we got back to the office, Evan paused at my desk, looking a little nervous. "Hey, I know this might sound crazy, but would you want to come watch a movie with me after work?" No pressure, just something different. I felt my stomach flip. It was as if the whole office had disappeared, and it was just the two of us standing there in the middle of my little corner of the world. "Yeah," I said, grinning. "I'd like that." As the day wound down, I caught myself sneaking glances at Evan, wondering what the hell was actually happening. It felt like we were both tiptoeing around a new kind of connection, one that was equal parts exciting and terrifying. Later, at his apartment, The vibe was relaxed but charged. We ended up sprawled on the couch, sharing popcorn and trading stories about our weirdest travel experiences. When the movie ended, I realized I didn't want to leave, but nerves got the better of me. Just as I was about to say goodnight, Evan reached out and gently took my hand. His touch was warm, familiar, and electrifying all at once. "I'm glad you're here," he said quietly. I squeezed his hand back, trying to keep my voice steady even though my heart was racing. "Me too." We sat there for a moment, the kind of silence that's comfortable and full of possibility. Then he leaned in slowly, giving me just enough time to pull away if I wanted. I didn't. Our lips met, soft and tentative at first, then deeper, like we were trying to make up for lost time. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, I knew this was something neither of us had expected, but both secretly hoped for. Walking home that night, I kept replaying every second. Sitting in my seat had been a challenge, a disruption, but maybe it was exactly the kind of disruption I needed. Because sometimes, the best connections come from the most unexpected places. And now, with Evan next to me, new guy, chair thief, and maybe something a whole lot more, I was ready to see where this unpredictable ride would take us. The next morning, I woke up with a strange mix of excitement and nervousness buzzing under my skin. It wasn't every day your harmless office rivalry turns into something that feels like it could actually mean something. I kept replaying last night, Evan's hand in mine, the way our lips met, soft and searching like we were both testing what this could be. And now, here I was, wondering if I should expect the same easy smile or an awkward silence when I saw him at work. Walking into the office, I caught sight of Evan already at his desk, headphones on, focused on his screen. His hair was even messier than usual, but that just made him look more real, less like some polished new hire. I debated whether to say something, then decided to just sit down at my desk and let things happen naturally, but apparently fate had other ideas. About 15 minutes after I settled in, Evan got up and walked over to my desk. He looked a little sheepish, but grinning nonetheless. "Morning," he said, voice low enough that I had to lean in to hear. "Morning," I replied, feeling my heart do that dumb little flip again. "I owe you an apology," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "For stealing your seat in the first place. I was being a jerk." I shook my head. "Nah, you wanted to shake things up. I get it. Besides, it got me to talk to you, so it's not all bad." He chuckled. Fair enough. We smiled at each other, and suddenly the office felt smaller, less intimidating. Like we had our own little bubble amid the usual chaos. The day went on with a strange, comfortable rhythm. We collaborated on a project, trading ideas with a flow I hadn't felt in a while. There was something about working next to him that made the dull tasks less dull, the emails less annoying. I even caught myself stealing glances when I thought he wasn't looking. During lunch, he pulled me into a quiet corner near the window. "So Alex, what's the weirdest thing you've ever done to shake up your routine?" I thought for a second. Probably dyeing my hair bright blue in college. It was a disaster, but definitely memorable. Evan laughed. "I'm sure it was." He glanced out the window, then back at me. "Sometimes, you just have to disrupt your own story to write a better one." I nodded, feeling like he was speaking directly to what I'd been wrestling with these past weeks. "Hey," I said, "what if we try shaking things up together? Outside work, I mean." He raised an eyebrow. "Are you asking me out, Alex?" I grinned, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "Maybe I am." He leaned closer, eyes twinkling. "I like it." That night, we went out for dinner at a little tapas place Evan recommended. The food was amazing, but the company was even better. We shared plates, stories, and laughs, watching the city lights pulse through the windows. At one point, Evan reached across the table, catching my hand in his. "I'm glad I took your seat that day," he said softly. "Me too," I thought, but instead, I just smiled and squeezed his hand. Back at the office the next day, something shifted. We were still careful, nothing too obvious, but the air between us crackled with unspoken things. Sometimes a brush of fingers reaching for the same file, a shared grin over a bad joke, a quick look that lingered just a moment too long. But then, As the days passed, I started to notice subtle changes in Evan, little moments when he seemed distracted, like a shadow crossing his face. One afternoon, he showed up late, eyes tired and shoulders slumped. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He shrugged but didn't meet my gaze. "Just some stuff. Nothing you need to worry about." But I did worry. Because the more I got to know him, the more I realized he wasn't just the new guy with a mysterious past. He was someone trying to rebuild himself, piece by piece. One evening, after a late meeting, we ended up alone in the conference room. The city lights flickered behind us, casting long shadows. Evan looked at me, serious this time. "Alex, I need to be honest," he said. "There's more to my past than I told you, things I'm not proud of, and I'm scared it might push you away." I felt my chest tighten. "Try me." He took a deep breath. "Before I moved here, I made some bad choices. Not just in relationships, but in work, too. I burned bridges, lost trust. I've been trying to fix that, but sometimes it feels like the past is a weight I can't shake." I reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "Everyone has a past. What matters is the person you're becoming." He looked at me like I'd just handed him a lifeline. "Maybe we can help each other," I added. "Shake up old stories, write new ones." He smiled, the kind of smile that's both hopeful and grateful. That night, as I walked home under a sky full of stars, I realized that Evan wasn't just the new guy who sat in my chair on purpose. He was the start of something I hadn't expected, but couldn't imagine walking away from now. And if the past was a storm, maybe together we could find a way to weather it. The days that followed felt like we were dancing on this delicate line between work and something more. We weren't exactly official or anything, but the way our conversations lingered, the small touches that kept happening when no one was looking, they all added up. It was like we both wanted to see where this could go, but neither of us was ready to shout it from the rooftops just yet. One afternoon, the office was quieter than usual. A few folks were out sick, others working from home, and the hum of productivity had slowed to a gentle murmur. I was buried in a report when Evan appeared at my desk, that familiar, mischievous grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Hey, Alex," he said, voice low enough to make me lean in. "You want to take a break? There's this park nearby I found. It's kind of a hidden gem." I hesitated for just a second before nodding. Yeah, I could use some fresh air. We left the building together, stepping into the warm afternoon sun. The city noise faded behind us as we wound through quiet streets until we reached this little green spot tucked between two apartment buildings. It wasn't much, a few benches, some trees, but to Evan, it was a sanctuary. We sat on a bench side by side, the silence between us comfortable rather than awkward. After a few minutes, he spoke up. "You know, when I first started here, I wasn't sure if I'd last a week," he admitted. "But turning up in your seat, it was a risk. And now, I'm glad I took it." I looked at him, the way the light caught his eyes, making them seem almost electric. "Well, you definitely shook up my routine," he laughed softly, "and maybe I'll keep doing that." For a moment, we just watched the world go by. Kids playing, couples strolling, the occasional dog chasing after a frisbee. It was one of those simple, perfect moments that felt like it belonged to us alone. But then, as if the universe was testing us, my phone buzzed with a message from the office chat. It was from Jenna, our team lead. "Alex, can you come to my office? Need to talk about the Johnson project." I glanced at Evan, who gave me a subtle nod. "Duty calls," I said with a grin, standing up. Inside Jenna's office, things were tense. She looked serious, tapping her pen on the desk. "I wanted to talk about the Johnson project timeline," she said. "We're behind, and upper management's getting antsy." I nodded, already running through solutions in my head. "I've got some ideas to streamline the client feedback process. Maybe we can set up shorter, more frequent check-ins." She smiled, relief softening her expression. I knew I could count on you. Walking back to my desk, I felt a buzz of accomplishment, but also a pang of distraction. Evan was waiting for me, that same question in his eyes. How much of this chaos was going to get in the way of whatever we were building? Later that evening, we met up at a quiet bar Evan had mentioned. Dim lights, vinyl records playing softly, the kind of place you stumble upon and never forget. We settled into a booth, drinks in hand, the conversation drifting between work frustrations, favorite music, and that unspoken tension that was building between us. At one point, Evan reached across the table, fingers brushing mine. The touch was electric, and I felt all the doubts and fears melt away in that moment. "Alex," he said softly, "I don't want to keep hiding what this is between us. I know work makes things complicated, but I'm tired of pretending this is just a friendship." I swallowed hard, heart pounding. "Me too." The honesty in his voice broke something open in me. It wasn't just attraction or curiosity anymore. It was real, messy, and terrifying in the best way. We left the bar hand in hand, the city lights blurring around us like a dream. Walking through the streets, I realized this wasn't just about a chair or a new guy at work anymore. It was about two people daring to take a chance on something that could change everything. But even as the night stretched on, I knew the real challenge was just beginning. Because love at work is never simple, and neither of us was ready to face what that meant. Still, as we stopped on the corner, looking at each other under the street lamp, I felt a quiet confidence. We'd taken the first step. Now, we just had to figure out where to go from here. After that night, things between Evan and me settled into this new, quietly thrilling rhythm. We didn't announce anything at work, no grand declarations or awkward office gossip, but the way we moved around each other changed. There was a softness in our interactions. Little moments that made the day feel lighter, like sharing a coffee break or a quick joke across the room. It was enough. It was ours. Work still had its pressures. Deadlines didn't magically disappear, and sometimes the stress crept in. But now, having Evan around felt like a secret source of strength. When I hit a wall, he was there with a grin or a well-timed, "You got this," and suddenly the impossible seemed manageable. One afternoon, several weeks after we'd started this unspoken partnership, I found myself sitting in my chair, the very one Evan had claimed on his first day, looking out at the city skyline. The sun was dipping low, casting golden light over everything, and I felt this deep sense of contentment. Evan appeared beside me, holding 2 coffees. He handed me one without a word, then leaned against the edge of my desk. "Remember when I took your seat on day 1? He asked, smirking. I laughed. How could I forget? It was the biggest pain and the best thing that ever happened. He smiled, those blue eyes catching the fading light. "I'm glad I took that risk." "Me too," I said softly. There was a pause, that comfortable silence that only grows between people who've come to understand each other. "I guess what I'm trying to say," Evan began, "is that sometimes shaking up your story is exactly what you need to find the right person to share it with." I looked at him, and without thinking, reached out to take his hand. It felt natural, like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. "Then let's keep writing it together," I answered. No big speeches, no fireworks. Just 2 guys who started with a stolen chair and ended up finding something real. And that felt more than enough. Because sometimes, the best love stories don't need grand gestures. They just need the courage to take a chance, and the patience to build something genuine, one day at a time.